The vast expanse of space holds many secrets, but none quite as surprising as the true nature of humanity. In the year 2847, when the Brosc emerged from the darkness beyond known space, the United Planetary Coalition thought they knew everything worth knowing about their most troublesome members. They were wrong. Admiral Meilin Jiang stood at the viewport of her weathered vessel, the Star Vagrant, watching the distant explosions that marked yet another UPC defeat. Her calloused hands, marked with burn scars from countless reactor repairs, gripped the railing as she contemplated their next move. The UPC's pristine battleships were retreating, their hulls scarred by Brosc weapons fire, while her ragtag fleet of garbage ships prepared for what would appear to be another foolish engagement. "Captain," called out her first officer, Jack Rodriguez, his voice carrying the weight of years spent in the shadows of space. "The Brosc flagship is moving into position. They don't suspect we're here." The story of humanity's role in the Brosc War began long before that moment, in the chambers of the UPC Council, where Ambassador Kai Anderson endured the thinly veiled contempt of alien diplomats. The humans were considered little more than savages who had stumbled upon faster-than-light travel, an embarrassment to the civilized races of the Coalition. The irony wasn't lost on Mei Lin that the very characteristics the UPC despised about humans, their unpredictability, resourcefulness, and stubborn refusal to follow conventional warfare, would become their greatest assets. As she watched the UPC fleet retreat, a slight smile played across her weathered features. They had no idea that the real battle was about to begin. "All hands to battle stations," she commanded, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the bridge. "Initiate shadow protocol." The Star Vagrant systems powered down to bare minimums, its heat signature becoming nearly indistinguishable from the cosmic background radiation. This was a technique perfected in the lawless outer rings, where human pirates had learned to become ghosts among the stars. 300 years earlier, when humanity first joined the UPC, they had been welcomed with the patronizing tolerance one might show a primitive tribe that had somehow invented the wheel. The Coalition's member races, the crystalline Atrak, the telepathic Nonalin, and the technologically advanced Grell, had established what they considered the pinnacle of civilized space. Their ships were works of art, their societies were models of efficiency, and their diplomatic protocols were refined over millennia of peaceful cooperation. Then came the humans. "Remember when we first met the Atrak delegation?" Jack mused, his fingers dancing across the tactical display. "They nearly short-circuited their translation matrices trying to understand Earth's 17,000 spoken languages." Mei Lin nodded, remembering the chaos of those early days. The UPC had expected humanity to present a unified front, like every other species. Instead, they got a cacophony of nations, cultures, and ideologies, all arguing and competing, even as they reached for the stars. The Brosc flagship loomed ahead, its massive hull bristling with weapon arrays. Unlike the elegant designs of UPC vessels, Brosc ships were brutal things, built for overwhelming force rather than finesse. They had appeared without warning, destroying 3 worlds, including the peaceful Zenith, whose entire civilization had been reduced to ash in a matter of hours. "Core temperatures stable at 15%, reported Elena Kovac, the ship's engineer. Her ancestors had been asteroid miners, and that heritage showed in her ability to coax impossible performance from jury-rig systems. "We've got maybe 3 minutes before we need to vent." This was the kind of operation that would have horrified UPC tactical commanders. Running a fusion core at near shut-on temperatures while maintaining life support was considered impossible by their standards. But humans had been doing the impossible since they first crawled out of their caves and looked up at the stars. The Star Vagrant wasn't alone. Across the sector, other human ships were executing similar maneuvers. The Midnight Runner, commanded by former smuggler Marcus Chen, was infiltrating a Brosc supply line. The Storm Chaser, under Captain Aisha Patel, was preparing to disable a planetary defense grid. None of them would ever file official reports or claim credit for their actions. "Target locked," Jack announced. "Their shield harmonics are cycling exactly as predicted." Mei Lin took a deep breath. This was the moment that would determine whether weeks of planning and sacrifice would pay off. The Star Vagrant had deliberately taken hits in previous engagements, appearing weak and ineffective, all to establish a pattern the Brosc would dismiss. "Execute Operation Thunderbolt," she ordered. The ship's systems surged to life. power flooding from carefully hidden capacitors into weapons that looked like scrap but had been meticulously modified for this single purpose. The Brosc never saw it coming. 5 precision strikes, each targeting a specific weakness their intelligence had identified, and the massive flagship's shield grid collapsed. What followed was chaos, but controlled chaos, the kind humans excelled at. While the Brosc crew scrambled to respond to the shield failure, 3 more human ships emerged from hiding. The Starweaver, the Ghost Dance, and the Thunderchild, each appearing to be nothing more than damaged refugees, struck from different vectors. The UPC would later attribute the destruction of the Brosc flagship to a lucky hit from their retreating forces. They would never know about the carefully orchestrated dance of supposedly inferior human vessels, or the crews who risked everything to ensure the shot would count. As the Brosc flagship erupted into a spectacular display of secondary explosions, Maylin's thoughts drifted to her daughter back on Earth. Like many human children born during the war, young Maya had never known a time of true peace. Yet it was for her, and countless others across UPC space, that they fought with such desperate ingenuity. Multiple Brosc vessels responding to the distress call, Jack reported, his fingers already plotting their escape route. They're running standard search patterns. Standard, Maylin scoffed. That was the problem with the Brosc, and the UPC for that matter. They thought warfare could be reduced to mathematical formulas and proper procedures. They never understood that the greatest weapon in humanity's arsenal was chaos itself. The Star Vagrant slipped away, using debris from the destroyed flagship as cover. As they retreated, Elena worked her magic in engineering, modulating their power signature to match the radiation pattern of a destroyed ship. It was a trick learned from Earth's submarine warfare, adapted for the 3-dimensional battlefield of space. Meanwhile, across the sector, the human web of resistance was already adapting to this victory. Captain Marcus Chen's Midnight Runner intercepted the encrypted Brosc communications about the flagship's destruction. Within hours, that intelligence would be anonymously delivered to UPC Command, packaged as intercepted enemy transmissions. "They're calling us Bloodletter again," Elena reported from her station, a hint of pride in her voice. "The Brosc are warning all their ships about a phantom vessel that strikes without warning." The nickname had started as a Brosc curse, but it had become something else, a symbol of humanity's shadow war. While the UPC's mighty fleets engaged in formal battles, human ships struck from the darkness, bleeding the Brosc war machine through 1,000 small cuts. On the medical deck, Dr. Yuki Tanaka treated the wounds of crew members who had been thrown about during their attack run. Unlike the advanced medical facilities of UPC ships, the Star Vagrant sickbay was a testament to human adaptability. Regeneration tanks were cobbled together from salvaged parts, and traditional medicine sat alongside cutting-edge treatments. 3 cracked ribs, 1 concussion, and various minor injuries, Yuki reported over the comm. Nothing we haven't handled before. This was another aspect of humanity that baffled their allies and enemies alike, their ability to endure and recover from injuries that would incapacitate other species. While UPC medical protocols demanded weeks of recovery for similar injuries, human crews were notorious for returning to duty days after major trauma. The war continued this way for months. The UPC would engage in massive fleet actions, their ships arranged in perfect formation, while human vessels struck from the shadows. They attacked shipyards, sabotaged supply lines, and gathered intelligence that would mysteriously find its way to UPC commanders. One such mission took them to the Brosc colony world of Nexus Prime. The planet was a crucial manufacturing center, producing the plasma weapons that had proven so devastating against UPC shields. The official battle plan called for a massive assault by the combined UPC fleet, a frontal attack that would cost thousands of lives. But 3 days before the UPC arrived, a small group of human ships, including the Star Vagrant, implemented their own solution. Using modified mining charges, another innovation from humanity's resource extraction past, they triggered a series of artificial earthquakes that disabled the planet's main production facilities. "The UPC will think it was natural seismic activity," Maylin explained to her crew as they watched the facilities crumble from orbit. "They'll never know we were here." "And the Brosc?" asked a young crew member, Thomas Wright, who had joined them after his family's trading vessel was destroyed in the early days of the war. "They'll know," Jack answered grimly. "They always know. They just can't prove it." The truth was, humanity had turned their greatest perceived weakness, their fragmented, chaotic nature, into an unprecedented military advantage. While other species operated through official channels and formal chains of command, humans had created an informal network of ships and crews that could operate independently yet coordinate their actions with remarkable efficiency. The war reached its turning point during the Battle of Helios Gate, though the UPC would never record it as such in their official histories. While their massive fleet engaged Brosc forces in the system's outer reaches, Malin and a small contingent of human ships executed what would later be known among their own as Operation Ghost Light. "Our ships, maintain radio silence," Malin commanded through their encrypted quantum channel, another primitive human technology the UPC had dismissed. "Initiate drift sequence on my mark." The Star Vagrant, along with 4 other vessels, the Night Whisper, the Storm's Edge, the Silent Prayer, and the Broken Arrow, killed their engines and began a controlled fall toward Helios Gate's massive orbital defense platform. Their hulls had been coated with reactive paint that absorbed radar signals, another innovation born from Earth's ancient military history. Elena's voice was barely a whisper in the darkened bridge. "Core temperature at 5%, life support on minimal, we're practically dead in space." "Just the way we want them to see us," Malin responded, her eyes fixed on the massive Brosc structure growing larger in their viewport. The defense platform was the key to the entire sector. Its quantum arrays controlled the Brosc's faster-than-light communication network. Without it, their fleets would be reduced to using conventional signals, creating delays that would cripple their coordination. As they drifted closer, Jack pulled up detailed scans on his console. Their patrol pattern hasn't changed in 6 months, predictable, just like everything else they do. The human ships waited, floating among actual debris from previous battles until the patrol ships passed. Then, with precision that would have shocked their UPC allies, all 5 vessels powered up simultaneously and launched their attack. The Night Whisper, captained by former street racer Zara Patel, led the charge. Her ship's experimental plasma drives, considered unstable by UPC standards, allowed her to cross the distance to the platform in seconds. The Storm's Edge and Silent Prayer split off, targeting the platform's defensive turrets with surgical strikes. "Now, Elena!" Malin ordered as they reached their designated position. "Give them something to remember." Elena activated their ship's secret weapon, a modified mining laser that could cut through shields by matching their harmonic frequency. It was dangerous, unreliable, and completely against UPC safety protocols. It was also devastatingly effective. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, the massive platform was crippled, its communication array reduced to floating debris. The Brosc would later attribute the attack to a coordinated strike by UPC Special Forces, never realizing that 5 primitive human ships had changed the course of the war. But victory came at a cost. The Silent Prayer, commanded by veteran privateer Diego Ramirez, took a direct hit during their escape. Rather than retreat, Diego made the ultimate sacrifice. His ship, already fatally damaged, rammed into the platform's primary reactor, ensuring the facility could never be repaired. "Remember the prayer," Malin whispered, a human tradition as old as seafaring itself, honoring those lost in battle. The UPC fleets would arrive hours later to find the Brosc forces in disarray, their communications reduced to short-range transmissions. The official reports would credit the fortuitous destruction of the platform to unknown causes. Back in their secure rendezvous point, Dr. Tanaka treated the wounded while the crews shared a quiet moment of remembrance. They drank to Diego's memory with actual Earth whiskey, a contraband substance in UPC space due to its barbaric alcohol content. "They'll never know, will they?" Thomas asked, his young face showing the weight of their secret war. "All the sacrifices, all the lives we've lost." "They're not meant to know," Malin replied, her voice firm but gentle. "That's not why we fight." As if to emphasize her point, their quantum communicator lit up with new intelligence. The Brosc were regrouping at their secondary command center on Tartarus 3. Already, plans were forming in Malin's mind. More impossible missions, more lucky victories for the UPC, more shadows in which humanity would continue their silent war. And the final months of the war would prove to be the most challenging and the most revealing of humanity's true nature. As the Brosc forces retreated to Tartarus 3, their last major stronghold, the UPC prepared for what they expected to be a prolonged siege. Their analysts predicted a minimum of 5 years to break through the planet's defenses. They would be proven wrong in less than 3 weeks. The intelligence from the Midnight Runner confirms it, Jack reported during a clandestine meeting of human ship captains in a forgotten asteroid belt. The Brosc Supreme Commander is personally overseeing the defense of Tartarus 3. Mei Lin studied the holographic display showing the planet's fortifications. The Brosc had turned their last bastion into a fortress that would have made Earth's ancient Spartans proud. 3 layers of planetary shields, automated defense platforms, and enough firepower to destroy half the UPC fleet. "They're expecting a direct assault," Aisha Patel observed, her dark eyes gleaming with the same calculating intelligence that had made her ancestors successful guerrilla fighters. "They'll never expect us to walk in through the front door." The plan they devised would have been dismissed as suicidal by UPC Tactical Command. It required precision timing, split-second coordination, and a level of deception that only humans could maintain. Over the next week, human ships began appearing in Brosc sensor range, apparently damaged and desperate. The Star Vagrant itself limped into the system, broadcasting distress signals and venting plasma from its damaged engines. "Brosc patrol approaching," Elena reported, her fingers dancing across her console to maintain the deception. "They're buying it." The Brosc, following their standard protocols, began capturing the seemingly helpless human vessels. Each ship was brought through the planetary defense grid, their crews apparently surrendering without resistance. The Brosc never realized that every captured ship was part of an intricately choreographed dance. "They've separated us into different detention blocks," came the encrypted message from Marcus Chen, now a prisoner in the main security complex. "Just like we predicted." For 3 days, human crews endured Brosc interrogation, appearing to break under pressure and reveal UPC fleet movements. In reality, each seemingly random piece of information was part of a larger puzzle, leading the Brosc to concentrate their forces exactly where the humans wanted them. On the 4th day, as the UPC fleet appeared at the edge of the system in what they thought would be the opening move of a long campaign, humanity struck. It began with Elena's masterpiece, a computer virus disguised as routine maintenance data uploaded through the captured ship systems. At precisely 300 hours local time, every power relay in the planetary defense grid experienced what appeared to be a random surge. "All teams execute Operation Checkmate," Mei Lin broadcast on their secure channel. In detention blocks across the facility, human crews who had appeared broken and defeated sprang into action. Their apparently surrendered weapons, which the Brosc's scans had shown as harmless scrap, were reassembled into functional arms. The Star Vagrant's crew, led by Jack, fought their way to the central control room. Aisha's team secured the shield generators. Marcus and his people took the communication hub. Within 40 minutes, the most heavily fortified planet in Brosc space had been compromised from within. But it was what happened next that would truly demonstrate the difference between humanity and their UPC allies. As Brosc forces rushed to respond to the internal threat, they found themselves facing not just escaped prisoners, but their own automated defenses. Elena's virus had given control of the entire planetary defense network to the human teams. "We have the Supreme Commander," Jack reported from the control room. "He's requesting terms." Mei Lin made her way to the command center, where the Brosc leader waited. The massive alien, nearly 3 meters tall, looked at her with a mixture of rage and dawning comprehension. "You," he growled in heavily accented standard. "All this time, it was you, the bloodletters." "We tried to warn you," Mei Lin replied calmly. "When you destroyed those 3 worlds, when you killed innocents who had never raised a hand against you, we tried to show you that some lines should never be crossed." The Supreme Commander spat at her feet, a gesture that would be recorded and misinterpreted in official records. What the UPC would never know was that it was a sign of respect in Brosc culture, acknowledging a superior opponent. The aftermath of Tartarus III's fall would reshape the understanding of warfare across the galaxy, though not immediately. As UPC forces entered the system, expecting a brutal battle, they found instead a planet already secured, its defenses powered down, and the Brosc leadership ready to surrender. "Another miraculous victory for the Coalition," the UPC commanders would later declare in their grand halls, never questioning how their supposedly superior forces had faced such little resistance. But in the shadows of those same halls, Mei Lin and her fellow captains gathered one last time. They met in an old maintenance bay, surrounded by the ships that had won the war, vessels held together by determination and ingenuity, their battle scars telling stories that would never appear in official records. The UPC is already rewriting history, Marcus said, nursing a cup of contraband coffee. According to their latest report, it was the 47th Grell Battalion that breached Tartarus III's defenses. Elena laughed, though there was no bitterness in it. Let them have their stories. We know the truth. The truth was written in the scars they all carried. It showed in Thomas's limp, earned when he manually overrode a fusion core to save his ship. It was evident in Dr. Tanaka's cybernetic eye, lost during a desperate operation in the midst of battle. It manifested in the quantum-etched memorial list that each human ship carried, naming every soul lost in their shadow war. When the UPC representatives arrived at Earth, months later, bearing gifts and accolades they had finally deemed appropriate to bestow, they found something they didn't expect. The humans had built a monument not to their own victories, but to the 3 worlds lost at the war's beginning. The UPC delegation stood before it, uncomprehending, as Mei Lin explained its significance. "We fight not for glory," she told them, "but because someone must stand between the darkness and the light." The UPC officials left with their gifts undelivered, finally beginning to understand what they had missed all along. Humanity's strength lay not in their technology, which the UPC had dismissed as primitive, nor in their military might, which had seemed so paltry. It lay in their fundamental nature, their ability to adapt, to sacrifice, to fight not for recognition but for what they believed was right. Years later, when the last of the Brosc records were decoded, a young UPC analyst would find a personal log from the Supreme Commander, recorded the night before Tartarus III fell. In it, the Brosc leader spoke of the humans with a respect that bordered on awe. "Then my argue not like the others. They do not seek to prove their superiority. They do not fight for glory or empire. They fight like their world depends on it, every time, even when the world in question is not their own. They are the bloodletters not because they love blood, but because they are willing to bleed for others." The Star Vagrant still sails the space lanes, though few recognize it for what it is. Its hull bears no special markings, no indication of its role in history. Sometimes, in distant ports, other captains whisper about the strange human ships that appear when needed and vanish just as quickly. They speak of impossible rescues and mysterious guardians. And if you look carefully, in the quietest corners of space stations across the galaxy, you might find small memorials. They're easy to miss, just simple plaques bearing the image of 3 worlds and a phrase in ancient human languages. "Grant them rest. We will erect a sword of fire to guard the resting place." The humans keep their vigil not because they must, but because they choose to. They remain the guardians no one asked for, the heroes who prefer to be seen as pirates and scoundrels, the bloodletters who would rather be remembered as nuisances than celebrated as saviors. For they know, better than any race in the galaxy, that true strength lies not in the battles you're remembered for, but in the ones you fight when no one is watching. If this tale of humanity's hidden heroism moved you, don't let it fade into the shadows like the bloodletters themselves. Hit that like button to help others discover this story and share it with fellow space opera enthusiasts who appreciate tales of unconventional heroism. Subscribe to join our growing community of storytellers and story lovers, and don't forget to turn on that notification bell. You never know when another tale of humanity's remarkable spirit might emerge from the depths of space. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. What would you have done in Mei Lin's position? Would you fight in the shadows for others without seeking recognition? Your perspective adds to the richness of our shared narrative. Until our next adventure among the stars, remember, sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones history never mentions.